Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unscripted Reviews with me, Freebie Wits, your host. And today we're taking a look at Slay the Spire, finally! For those of you who don't know me, Slay the Spire is one of my favorite games of all time. So much of a favorite, in fact, that it's actually the subject of my first video here on YouTube on my channel. Seriously guys, check it out. It's Analyze and Adapt Episode 1, Slay the Spire, where I take a look at Slay the Spire and try to analyze and adapt it into either a board/card game, a tabletop RPG, and most importantly, a LARP. Took me long enough, isn't it? Anyways, I won't bore you with any more history. We're almost at the 1 minute mark, so let me just get on to if I like the game or not. And you've obviously heard me just gush about it, so yes, I do like the game. So what is Slay the Spire? And the answer is it's a card game. A deck building card game. You fight enemies using attack and block cards and special effects, debuffs, buffs, you get the idea. In theory, it's pretty simplistic. As you defeat enemies, you can get more cards and such like that. If you defeat certain kinds of enemies, you can get special relics, which are modifiers for your entire run, their little passive abilities and such like that. Eventually, you can reach shops or random events that will give you chances to earn more buffs, heal you, you get the idea. What originally drew me to this game was Hearthstone's game mode, Kobolds and Caverns, or Caverns and Kobolds, something like that. And the idea was that, as I said, you fight something, and as the game progresses, as you defeat things, you get access to a bunch of rewards and such. What's difference between this and Hearthstone's version of this is that your health stays static. If you're damaged by the end of a Slay the Spire fight, you stay damaged unless you heal up in between and such like that. In theory, if you have enough healing, you could come out of the battle stronger than where you left off, than when you entered, I should say. Now, to stop this from happening, number one, healing is kind of rare in the game. There's only very, very, very few cards that can do that. Even fewer relics that can do that. And in one case, it's kind of capped out and such, in that it only activates once you hit half hit points or less. Another limiting factor is most, if not every single enemy in the game gets stronger as the game progresses. So if you're stalling the game to heal yourself up to max hit points, it may not work out because the guy who hit for 6 damage will probably hit for 10 the next turn and so on and so forth. And that's the whole crux of the game. You can't really stall for that long. You can stall and try to heal up as much as you can if you have the healing stuff to do it, but for the most part, you want to finish battles as quickly as possible. Speaking of finishing battles as quickly as possible, there's a speedrun community about finishing this game as quickly as possible. It's freaking insane and fantastic, might I add. Now you might be wondering, wait, hang on, it's a roguelike game. How can you have a speedrun community? It's randomized. You get lucky, you could go really fast. Get unlucky, no matter how good you are, you get screwed over. And that is true. However, you can, when you make a run, you have a seed. Using this seed, you can share that with other people and they can share their seeds with you. So essentially, as long as everybody has the same seed or agrees to use the same use the same seed, you could in theory have everyone facing the exact same run as everyone else. So let's move on to the specific mechanics of the game itself. Each card has an energy cost at the top left, and they'll have their little effects in the middle. Sometimes it'll be damage, sometimes it'll be block, sometimes a special effect. Now, with the block such a mechanic, you don't actually have to guess what the enemy's going to do. It's always going to have their intentions on top of them. A big problem with a lot of card games is the fact that there's some level of RNG. Some people consider that a problem, some people don't, some people think the randomness is more fun. And you know what? It is a lot of times if done right. And I feel that Slay Spire taking out the randomness of what the enemy will do, or at least mitigating it somewhat, makes it more fun. It makes it a bit more predictable, more guided, so when RNG does screw you over, it feels like it comes from the deck you built. Yes, you can draw the wrong cards at any time, frankly speaking, but for the most part, you get to choose what goes into your deck. You get to choose if you remove cards from your deck to decrease your chance for drawing bad cards, for example. You can choose not to put bad cards in at all. That said, you do start with the most basic of basic cards, which aren't very good and you want to replace as soon as possible. of which there are many strategies to get around. You can make your deck as small as possible, removing all the bad cards completely until you're left with nothing but the best cards in the game, or you can just load up on good cards so you're less likely to draw the bad ones in the first place. Heck, you could just make cards that draw more cards so you can ignore the bad cards and just get all the good cards into your hand anyways, even after drawing the bad ones. Speaking of bad cards, sometimes you involuntarily have these bad cards smushed into your deck, whether they're status effects that come from the actual enemy themselves or curses that come from random events and such. Things that will hurt you if they're in your hand by the end of the turn, to things that will hurt you while you play cards while they're in your hand, to things that just don't do anything and just take up, well, card space in your hands. If you get unlucky enough, you could draw an entire handful of these status cards that don't do anything for you. And that's something that you can't really replicate in real life card games that much, putting junk cards in the enemy deck and such. To me, it's very thematic. You get slimed up by the enemy, suddenly you have a bunch of slime cards in your deck that you don't really want, and you have to spend precious energy to get rid of, to wipe it off yourself. I love that idea. Now, that's not to say that it's always involuntary. The Ironclad has cards like Wild Strike, which actually do put certain status cards in your deck mid-battle. Think of it as a high damage card that makes you screw up in the late game. That said, there are some cards that make it so that you perform even better with these status cards in your deck, or even curses. Things that will let you breathe fire if you draw a status card. Things that literally trinkets, relics I should mentioned earlier. One of them actually gives you extra strength that let all your attack cards do extra damage the more curses there are in your deck. Now, I mentioned the Ironclad, and if you're watching this video, you've probably seen a couple of the classes already. They have different play styles, they have different passive abilities, they have different unique mechanics to their decks. And the only way to access these mechanics are either by playing the different classes or getting a special relic or a custom run. That's right, there are custom runs. You can make your own dream game mode essentially with this. And speaking of your own dream game mode, there are freaking mods. There's one that turns you into Saitama from One Punch Man. It's as boring yet as amazing as it sounds. Seriously, it's only good for really a couple games, good get a laugh out of your system, but it's pretty accurate to, well, One Punch Man. There's even a Hollow Knight overhaul mod. That's pretty damn amazing. That's fun as hell. Do I recommend Slay the Spire to you? And I would say, maybe if you're the sort who loves card games, the sort who loves roguelikes, the sort who loves deck building, then I say yes, absolutely. Is it too expensive for you? Well, I don't know. Each person is different. But if you do feel like it's too much, but you want to play something like it anyways, I recommend getting to Hearthstone, the Kobolds and Caverns game mode, Kobolds and Catacombs I think it is, I can't remember. Try that game mode, and if you find yourself liking it, but don't like the random nature of it as much, then take a look at Slay the Spire. There's nothing to lose. And if you don't really want to play it, but still are interested, watch people on Twitch play it. They're pretty good. There's a lot of backseat gaming involved, but the ones who are really good and entertaining, I feel. Anyways, that's my review of Slay the Spire. I really should have done this a long time ago. Hope you enjoyed it, and bye-bye.